Good morning. We hope you're ready to get a little bit uncomfortable, but at the end there's a treat if you participate and if you embrace the fear and the excitement of what's ahead. The best questions in the Q&A at the end of our talk will get a signed copy of our very popular new book, which sold out at both of our book launches. But what we're here to talk to you about today is how to develop a solutionist mindset. In other words, how to actually add value and be seen as being valuable by the people that you work with and work for. As to what that really means and why this is an important conversation at the moment, well, as our introduction said, and for both the previous speeches, in fact, automation, technology is something that's on people's minds. It's on people's minds both in terms of efficiencies and in terms of threats to our current position in society, in our organizations, and in the economy. So automation is the one thing that we all need to be paying attention to, but there's another challenge that's going on that's going to affect all of us in this room and everyone that we work with and for, and that is globalization. Combined, both the forces of automation, that's technological advancement, and globalization are doing one thing, and that is increasing competition. It's increasing competition in the job market, in the economy at large, beyond borders, and in such a way that we're basically facing almost a kind of state of nature where it's survival of the fittest, survival of the strongest, and it's going to feel very unfair for people who are not fit, strong, and solutionists, as we're going to speak about today. This is because automation is basically competing for any fat in your system. There's a reason for that. None of us like to pay more than what we're getting. We all want to make sure we're getting a good deal, whether it's in the thing that we're buying, whether it's in the service that we're purchasing, or whether it is in what we are paying our employees. We want to get a good deal. We want to make sure that we're able to hang on to as much value in that equation as possible, and so is everyone else in the chain. And that's why as soon as value pulls up in certain parts of our economy, it sits and gets fatty and cholesterol-y. That's when people are looking for opportunities to get a piece of that fat in the system, and that's where technological development and progress comes in. Someone says, I resent paying this amount, so I'm going to look for a better solution that can do it cheaper, faster, quicker, and they're going to go do that. This happens all the time. This is what progress is, doing more with less. And that means that people who might be comfortable right now shouldn't feel too comfortable in the long run, because your comfort is somebody else's opportunity. And that's what we're seeing with technology, and this is why so many people are frightened about their jobs, and rightly so, their place in the market. Globalization does a very similar thing. And this is combined with technology. We all know that the COVID days taught us just how we could do work across borders. Despite what our labor regulations are, despite how hard it is to get visas, you can now buy the best talent in the world, wherever you are in the world. And that means if you are talent, you have to compete with the best in the world, not just with the people living in the same economy as you, paying the same sort of costs for their housing and bonds. You've got to compete for the best talent that has the best value, that can deliver a solution the way that you're delivering a solution. And that's great news if you are the best talent and the best value talent in the world. It's scary again if perhaps you're not, if perhaps you know deep down inside that someone else could do your job a little bit more efficiently, a little bit more cost effectively. And that's the reality. That is the thesis and the reason why Sharon and I wrote this book. So although it's called Survive the AI Apocalypse, it's a lot more than that. The book is really about surviving this hyper-competitive economy that we have, where every ounce of our privilege, every ounce of our current position is going to be interrogated by those forces of globalization and automation, by people who can add more value than you can to your current end user. And what this really means, to lighten up the tone a little bit, is that effectively BS is being cleaned out of the system. That's the good news. The fat, the cholesterol that's been pooling up is now being scrutinized. Yes, people have spotted it, and they're going to come and clean it out. They're going to come and get that fat in the system. And that's why it's important to go back to the sociologist David Graeber, who wrote an amazing book, not our book, called Bullshit Jobs. If you work in HR, you should know this book. It's quite a long book, so luckily we'll give you the highlights here today. But he really spoke about the sorts of jobs that are in trouble here. And those are jobs that add cost rather than adding value. These are businesses and organizations that, again, add cost into our economies without adding back representative value. And that's why it's important to note what this sort of BS work is. You need to be aware of this, you need to identify it, you need to eradicate it in order to protect yourself in the economy going forward. That's how you become a solutionist. So what is BS work? Well, let's start with what it's not. BS work is not hard work. Hard work is quite often badly paid, perhaps underpaid, but it is necessary work. These are the people who look after our children, who look after our homes, who fix our blocked drains. They might not have high status in society, but their jobs are absolutely necessary, if quite unpleasant. That's not BS work. BS work, on the other hand, quite often looks a lot nicer than it really is under the surface. BS work is quite often easy, overpaid or extra well paid, but ultimately unnecessary. So, I mean, you know a few examples, Sharon. Where do these BS jobs usually pile up?
Do you want the uncontroversial or the controversial answer?
We want the controversial answer. Obviously, this is why we're here.
So, I mean, I think as an HR community, we've taken a bad rap for many years. Do you agree? Yeah.
Yeah, you can speak up.
How many people read articles on a day-to-day basis that HR is where the BS lies, right? In the policy, in the process. And there are multiple areas in which that exists. But what we're here to talk about is how do we shift that narrative and finally shift the narrative for HR beyond be a strategic partner. But I think, Bron, the BS roles exist at the very top. They exist all the way to the very bottom. And you will see, if you go to our website and read our book, we talk about the BS. Am I allowed to say bullshit? Well, I'm going to. Bullshitometer test.
Just quote it to David Graeber, and then you're not saying it.
There's a bullshitometer test for individuals and organizations that helps us as HR start to navigate strategic conversations about how we design work and what work actually gets done. So what and how have we designed our organizations? What is a job? Should a job profile actually even exist? And so, Bron, the answer is that bullshit is everywhere. And those jobs exist if you're checking other people's work.
Yep.
How many PowerPoint presentations do you create in a year?
Yeah.
Who gets those presentations? What do they turn into? How many meetings do you attend on a daily basis? What outcomes are derived from those meetings, if any? That is BS work. And we're all in it, and we all do it, and oftentimes we perpetuate it. And as HR, we can unlock a way more productive and effective, efficient, and experience-led workforce, which I'll talk about just now. Back to Bron.
So we also got to help you. You're welcome to take a screenshot of this, going back to the original definitions of bullshit jobs, or BS jobs, to pardon our French. These are some of the types you might want to look out for. Flunkies, people who perform vanity tasks to flatter egos. This is the personal assistant you don't really need, but you like to have following you around to make you look good and exciting.
Carry your bag.
Goons, these are the people who enforce questionable, unethical, or unnecessary processes, right? So they effectively extort rents from our corporate world. Duct tapers, people who fix problems that shouldn't exist at all.
Exactly.
We all know those people, right? These are people who are actually good people doing good work, but they're wasting their time doing tasks that shouldn't exist. Their talents should be applied to doing more value-adding tasks rather than just correcting someone else's mess. Box tickers, that's what Sharon was talking about. These are the people who check checks, generate paperwork, create work. You know, it look very, very busy, but create
are
stuff
busy.
and output. They're very busy, they're hardworking, they might even work extra long hours, but effectively are busy creating reports that no one will read and filing paperwork that no one will ever see. Processes for the sake of processes. And then, of course, the taskmasters, which is probably the most dangerous field, but this is about the most best paid of all of these types of BS. These are the people who manage others in pointless hierarchical roles. So add layers to the organogram, but all they're really doing is passing work up and down without actually creating any value in the system. So that's just a little checklist that you can go through for yourself and go through your organogram and see if you can spot any of these sitting around your organization. Another way to look at it is with this little cartoon that we found, and that is a test that you can try for yourself. And we do encourage you to try it in the tea breaks later. Can you describe your job in 3 words or less? If not, your job might not be a real job. It might just be a job that exists to extract payroll without actually adding value to your end users. And yet another way. Another test that you can try for yourselves. Can you picture your job being done by a little piggy wearing clothes in a children's book? In other words, can you describe what you do to a child, that a child will understand what you do, right? This is where we understand the difference between real work and make work, which many of us, quite frankly, who are quite well paid and live very nice lives, are actually engaged with. And that worked as long as those twin forces of automation and globalization weren't knocking on the door and coming to eat your cake. So as Sharon was saying, the important thing to do is to own it, to look in the mirror and to own whether you belong to any of those categories, and to be honest about if your job has a grander title than it really does grand value to society, and to go and investigate where the waste is in your personal role, but also within your broader organization. So look always through those 2 lenses. Where is my precious time as a human being wasted on work that's not adding value? But also, where do I have roles in my organization that are extracting value from my organization's ultimate success, from shareholder value on the one hand, but also from delivering customer value on the other? And as another heuristic, as Sharon likes to say, it lives in bureaucracy, bloat, boredom, and boardroom meetings, all the B's over there, which we can interrogate by just having a look over here. So you can go investigate where your BS is using the test that we have here, which will basically help you go through this checklist in much greater detail. So we'll leave that up there on the screen for a second for you to take down that URL. Take a picture of the QR code, but do this. This audit will take you a bit of time. So set aside a good half an hour to an hour to go through and answer all those questions very, very honestly. We've designed this based on Sharon's years and years of experience doing exactly that, rooting out the BS from organizations. And what you're left with will, of course, be exactly the opposite. What are some of the things you found with people taking this test so far, Sharon?
I think the reality is that we all do some level of BS work. So let me just put it out there, right? Sometimes BS is necessary. We have stakeholders to manage. We have egos to stroke. We have investors to, entice to give us more money. And really, do people want to hear what we as often HR practitioners have to say, which is the truth? Uncovering where the BS is and having tough conversations is a really hard rap, especially when we can't get the headcount data right and we're having to redo the report, or, we end up not having computers and the basics done on the first day when people arrive at work and they haven't been onboarded correctly, etc. And so I think from an HR perspective, our roles are shifting, and it is time for us to shift that narrative and to shift the fact that our job descriptions need to look different. In fact, we shouldn't have them at all. And I'll talk to that a little bit later, so rather than go into it in too much detail now, I will wait to the value conversation.
So we understand you're not going to have time to do that audit for yourself, and we encourage you to do it with your team members too, to get them to also reflect on where the real value lies and where it doesn't. We've got a shorter version of this for you right now, and that is for you to reflect on how and where can you start to clean up the BS in your organization. And that's why we invite you to partake in our live audience poll, so don't be shy. Again, scan the little QR code. You should get led to write in, or you can go to slido.com and put the little hashtag number in there. But just if you use the QR code, you'll be able to. And just think for a second, reflect and say, what BS do you need to kill? Do you have any vanity seekers, any box ticking requirements, any checking checkers? Where do you see the wastage in your organization? Where do you need to go back come Monday and start cleaning up? Too many meetings? That's a good one. Who else? Who else knows that there's some wastage somewhere? Ah, there you go. Manco, meetings, processes, meetings. It should be an email. Yes, we know where it is mostly, but do we have the actual organizational will to clean it up? Yeah, too many meetings is a clear winner here. Manco. What do you think about that, Sharon?
Yeah, so I think, again, the role that we need to play, which I'll talk a little bit about later, because I really do have a big soapbox, especially for us in HR, is that we need to shift culture through practice. And I think we often, as HR, love EVPs and values and cool posters and rah-rah videos. And we tell everybody we need to, embrace simplicity and simplify complexity and embrace our talent and be the people shifters. But all of those are just words. The way to do that is way more tricky. And it involves people, process, and tech. And I think some people have highlighted, for example, manual intense processing. Agile is a big word, and everyone wants to implement Agile. Yet you still follow a very waterfall budgeting process. Come the end of the year, you're all rallying to try and spend money. You're delivering activity and measuring activity and helping people look so busy through the performance process as opposed to measuring outcomes. And as HR, our ability to get people to focus on solutions. A meeting can be 3 minutes. Is there something we need to solve? Who do we need in the room to solve it? What kind of answer do we need? Versus long, drawn-out governance processes that are really there to establish minutes and to prove or cover our backsides if something goes wrong. So the reality is that we can play a transformative role by shifting practices, because practices drive behaviors, and we tend to often take culture and implement it as a process or a program. So it is big, it is difficult, it is intense, and it is hard, but we as HR have a way to do that and shift it if we can adopt a solutionist mindset and join that movement.
Exactly. So
8 minutes left.
You clearly know where the mess is, but now there's the other point, which is, of course, the flip side, which is you got to figure out where the waste is, where you got to cut, where you got to clean up, but you also got to then focus on defining and articulating the actual value that you do add. So you want to cut the waste or the drag on the system, and you want to lean into the actual value that you personally deliver and that your organization as a whole delivers to our overall economy. And that's why we want to ask you that question too. So again, get out your phones and quickly scan that code. And think about this one. This is a harder question, because the value that you add is not what you do, but it is what you do that is actually valuable to someone. What is the value that you bring?
We're going to run out of time.
Provide solutions is good. We'll get back to that. A lot of you are adding insights. That's good. Think about that. Another way to answer this question is to put yourself into the eyes of the person who's paying you, whether that's your boss or your customer, and say, why are they paying you? Are they paying you because they have to pay you, in which case you should go back to the bullshitometer? Or are they paying you for something here? So some of these are very good, for a different perspective, for a vision, for support. Those that are slightly more task-orientated might need to reconsider some of this. If you're stuck with that, don't worry. On our website, we've also got the Can You test, which will help you figure out what your value is and how to deploy it in various different contexts. The other challenge is to, once you've articulated and defined what your value is, to follow that value through the supply chain. To figure out again where it's being lost, where that mess is that you still need to clean up, and also again, on the positive side, to figure out where you can go forth and add even more value. Again, that's something you're going to have to do as an individual and as a team. Unfortunately, those tests are free for you on the website. But ultimately, what we want you to be is to become a solutionist. That is someone who solves problems and who makes a practice or occupation of solving those problems. In other words, someone that delivers real value and is ruthless at also solving the problem of cleaning up all the mess in the system. And that brings us to basically the crux of this, which I'll hand over to Sharon to, which is basically the solutionist system, which we detail in the book, which once we're done, the best question can win, that we teach people how exactly to do that, how to start leaning in to your value to become a solutionist.
Cool. Thanks, Bron. Sure. Thought she wasn't going to give me a chance. All right.
That's the most important part.
I do want to take us back to the slide around what value you add, and I really want to bring this home to the human resources community, particularly, and asking that question, what do we add as HR? I've seen things on the slide around belonging, commitment, all of those things. And the question is, if you were to ask your employees and your workforce, as well as your senior leaders, what value you add, would they say the things you've said about yourself? And so as we define the role that we play to our children and the pig analogy or the catchfish analogy, words like we foster belonging, etc., aren't going to fly. They come across quite fluffy, don't they? And so really what I want to challenge the community on is how do we shift the role of HR in the context of automation and globalization? How are we describing ourselves? We cannot be the people process people any longer. We cannot be those responsible for engagement. Our jobs have shifted to that of experience architecture, and that sounds also quite highfalutin, so let me simplify that and say we should be really thinking about how do we drive the right experience for our employees in the way that we want our customers to benefit, and that sustains this organization. And that means a completely different lens on many things, controversial things, even like diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It is not about tick box exercise. Yes, it is a little bit about diversity of thought, but it is about meeting your customers where your customers are at. What talent are we hiring to discover and talk to those clients? Are you putting a young Gen Z in a conversation with a big magnate with lots of wealth to invest, who's never earned more than whatever a month? What are we doing to get the person to a point where they're able to deliver those things? Do we know what the composition of our workforce is, who they're facing off to? And so our job is way bigger. We should be the revenue enablers. We should be the potential drivers. We should be measured on how and what we do to deliver business growth. And we are not measured that way. Guys, ChatGPT can write your talent strategy. It's just a PowerPoint presentation. Where's the meat behind that? Every vacancy is an opportunity to reorganize your business, to look at whether we need this job in this way, in this format. Should we be allocating people to jobs and activity, or should we be redefining the work based on the outcome for our client? So think about a talent practice without a 9-block grid. Imagine a world where we are focused on commercial conversations that says our business needs to do X, Y, and Z. We need to turn something around. We need to open in new markets. We need to improve market share. We need to, I don't know. What and how would HR reconfigure themselves to do that? our job becomes important if we can have the right conversations, if we can do what the solutionist movement suggests, which is really empathize with the context. And when I say context, it is global, it is local, it is individual, it is people. It is being able to take multiple sets of data related to that, not all the data, because there's so much of it. Do you know which data to use? To anticipate and integrate what is going to happen in the context of our world and our organization and our competition, and to be able to ideate, innovate, commercialize, and solution for the business. And that means finding, sourcing new talent pools potentially, or creating different solutions. Do we need the customer complaints department? Because we are just assuming they're going to be complaints. Like, should we be planning for the complaint or should we be planning for the growth?
Yeah.
How are we all responding to, we got to be digital first? Oh, off we rally and we hire a whole bunch of techies. Have we changed anything around, well, what is the experience we're trying to create? Are we digitizing forms? Are we shifting process? Are we shifting practice? Do we know what the business case is? Can you even answer the question as to how much spend SAP and all of this technology investment is costing and what benefit it's adding? Do people still have to phone the HR complaints department because their leave doesn't balance? Because if you're still dealing with those problems, we have not got the basics right. And when we come up with an answer, can we digitize and operationalize? How many of us create amazing projects and project plans on Excel and we implement the new technology and wow, we've got screening, AI-enabled screening for our CVs off the back of really dodgy job descriptions, which say absolutely nothing, that don't really talk to differentiators, but talk to the basics that everyone's recruiting for, which is activity and technical expertise, and absolutely not outcome? Are we putting technology on top of problems and hoping they'll be solved, or are we fixing the problems and using technology as an enabler? Can we mobilize decisions and stakeholders to get things done at the highest level and all the way down? And can we continuously learn and reimagine? And at the core, beyond our HR knowledge and skill, do we understand data and digital? Is our data accurate? Do we have the social gravitas and wherewithal to be able to deliver against a very different profession? Can we solution? And that means, can you ask the right questions and do you know what to do with the answers? And that is not an HR conversation. It is a business conversation. If you don't know how that plant works, how that machine works, what causes the breakdowns, what customers are unhappy about, what they're complaining about, you cannot solution. I laugh often in the banking industry, we've now got a ticket system. So you come into a branch and you have to take a ticket and then somebody tells you how to do something on the app. But you came to see a person. Like, have we got this right? Have we designed work? Have we designed our offices? Have we designed things in the right way? Or have we just jumped on the next hype of, oh, we need agile teams? So as HR, I do think that the narrative needs to shift. I don't think being a solutionist is easy, and I don't think everyone can necessarily do it. But it is time to shift away from traditional practices, stop selling talent management, stop selling activity and process. You need to sell outcomes. And that means you need to grow people. You need to attract people. It's very different from recruitment. The words and the narrative and the language we use must shift. If you're recruiting, you're sending out an ad for thousands of people and getting super excited when you win the award for Best Employer of the Year, where everyone says it's all fabulous. That's not data you need. You need to know where you're not. You want to attract the 10, 20, 30 CVs that talk to the people you need, not the 40,000 that requires AI to filter them out and misses the nuances. What you put into the tools is what you end up getting out. And if your current processes and stuff have not shifted, you will not get the value. And this thing is flashing at me very brightly, and this team is now frowning. So I'm assuming that I'm out of time. But if there is time for questions for the organizers, I'm going to end it there. This is a soapbox for me. Very passionate about how we shift HR's narrative. We have 2 books to give away. So if anyone has a comment, a statement, an outcome that you'd like to implement, we are happy to give 2 signed copies of our book away. And I do not think half an hour was good enough for this conversation, but maybe you can engage with us through our website and email, LinkedIn, etc. There are a couple of people in the room who were at the launches and have seen us talk before. So, yeah, I'll open the floor.
Feel very fast. There's a person in the back over there. There's a lady with the colorful jacket. I don't know if they've got a mic for you, or if you just want to stand up and use your voice.
Yeah, it comes up here where...
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I just have a question. You talk about becoming solutionists. What does a truly AI-fit mindset look like in practice? And what's one mindset shift ordinary professionals can make today to future-proof themselves?
Thanks. I think for me, just in terms of HR professionals and or talent professionals, is to think in outcomes in everything that we do. We get so caught up in activity and being busy. So, you know, when you're sourcing, resourcing, developing, growing, be very cognizant of what outcome is going to be achieved. And when I say outcome, it's not about the non-measurable stuff. It's the commercial stuff. Have we unlocked potential? Have we driven revenue? Have we created growth? Have we improved somewhat productivity, not from our perspective, not from how HR measures us, but from our customer's perspective? Do you know how close you are to the customer? Because you should be able to see it. See what the customer gets that you've put in front of them, the person that's servicing them, etc. It's time for us to shift the narrative and measure differently. I hope that helps.
I think they're saying we're out of time, but we can go chat to the lady over there later. But let's get you your book. Come on up, and we will hand over to the panel session that is coming up after us.